3:33 a.m., the hour every 911 dispatcher hates most, because if a call comes in at that time, it's almost never a wrong number. Outside the dispatch center, a blizzard was lashing against the windows like it wanted to claw the building apart. I had just slipped one ear cup off my headset and taken a sip of stone-cold coffee, my head foggy after nearly 10 straight hours on shift, when the emergency line alert cut through the room. Sharp, urgent, allowing no hesitation, not even for a second. I put the headset back on and hit the answer button. 911. What is your emergency? There was no response at first, just a stretch of silence longer than normal, long enough for the system to start tagging the call as caller not responding. I was about to repeat the question when the line filled with a ragged breath, like the caller had just run a long distance in the cold. I think there's someone standing outside my house. A man's voice, hoarse, shaking, trying and failing to keep the panic down. I straightened instantly, pushing my coffee aside. Professional instinct told me this wasn't a drunk call or a power outage hallucination. Sir, I need you to be specific. Is someone trespassing on your property? The system auto-populated the address. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach sink. A single log cabin, deep in the woods, more than 40 miles from the nearest town. No neighborhood, no neighbors, spotty cell reception. The kind of address where, when something goes wrong, the police always arrive later than they want to. What's your name? I asked, keeping my voice neutral, exactly as trained. Arthur, the man replied. I live alone. There's no one who should be here. I asked Arthur to describe the person outside. Another pause. Through the phone, I could hear the wind screaming, shrill and violent, like the microphone was pointed straight into the storm. It's very tall, Arthur said slowly, taller than anyone I've ever seen, and it's not moving. It's just standing there in the snow. Can you see its face? Yes, Arthur whispered. That's the problem. I typed quickly, my fingers moving in steady rhythm to keep my breathing under control. Describe the face for me. My mouth went dry at his answer. Its mouth, it's too wide, like it's been stretched, almost to the ears. I'd heard every kind of description in 5 years on the job. Burglars, addicts, people in psychosis, even calls driven by sleep-deprived delusions. But Arthur wasn't rambling. His voice had structure, coherence, real fear, the kind you can't fake. Arthur, stay calm, I said, even as my own hands started to feel cold. You're inside the house, correct? Are the doors locked? They're locked, all of them. Do you see footprints in the snow? No, Arthur answered immediately. There are no footprints at all. That made me pause. Snow was coming down hard, winds strong enough that local police had just announced delayed responses to non-emergency calls. No footprints meant either the person had just appeared or had never walked there. I told Arthur to pull the curtains closed and stay away from the front door. He did, but only a few seconds later, he sucked in a sharp breath. I shouldn't have looked, Arthur said, but I did. It's still there. I escalated the call to high priority and pinged the nearest patrol unit at the same time. Estimated arrival, 40 minutes if the road stayed open. I didn't tell Arthur that. Arthur, I said slowly, deliberately, grounding each word. You're doing great. I'm here with you. Tell me what's happening right now. There was a pause. Then in my headset I heard a sound very faint, not wind, not Arthur's voice. Another breath, slow, deep, steady, like someone standing very close to the phone. I don't hear it walking, Arthur whispered, but I feel like it knows I'm talking to you. I swallowed hard. Why do you think that? Arthur answered immediately, without hesitation, his voice shaking so badly it nearly broke. Because it's looking straight at me, and I swear, the way it looks, it's like it knows you're listening. That sentence hung between me and Arthur, heavy enough that I had to take a deep breath before continuing. In this job, I'd learned one thing. When callers start assigning intent to the danger in front of them, the situation is usually slipping beyond the safe boundaries of reason. Arthur, I said slowly, clearly, keeping my voice steady like an anchor line. Describe its face for me again. As much detail as you can. On the other end, I heard fabric rustle, like Arthur was pressing his back against the wall. When he spoke, his voice was much quieter, almost a whisper. Its skin is white, Arthur said. Not the kind of white you get from being out in the cold. White like freshly fallen snow. Flat, no color. I typed every word into the system. What about the eyes? I can't see whites or pupils, just two dark hollows, but I know it's looking at me. I glanced back at the address on my screen. Weather reports showed nearly half a meter of snow in that area. Arthur, do you see any footprints around the house? Any sign someone walked up the window? No, he replied instantly. Nothing at all. The snow is untouched. Like it. Never walked. A chill crept up my neck. I'd handled calls where someone stood outside a house for hours in a storm. Drunks, homeless people, even cruel pranks. They always left tracks. No footprints meant there was no comforting explanation. Arthur, close the curtains, I said. I want you away from the windows. I heard the curtains yank shut. I waited, counting my own breaths so my tension wouldn't bleed through. 3 seconds. 4. I shouldn't have looked again, Arthur said, his voice cracking. But I did. And, I asked, it's still there. I immediately pushed another priority signal to the nearest police unit, even though I already knew the response before it came back. ETA, 40 minutes. Weather delay. 40 minutes can feel like a lifetime when you're alone in the woods. Arthur, I said, trying to keep my tone reassuring. Help me by focusing on your breathing. In through your nose, count to 4. Hold for 2. Out through your mouth. I heard him follow along, his ragged breathing slowly evening out. These were the small moments we cling to in this job, the feeling that our voice still has some control over the situation. Then Arthur screamed, "It's gone!" The sound cut straight through my headset, making me flinch. My heart slammed, but a foolish part of me felt relief. Gone was better than standing there. "Arthur," I said quickly, "are you sure? Where are you looking?" "I don't see it anymore," he replied, his voice shaking, confused. "The window's empty, just snow." "Okay," I said. "Stay away from the front door. If you can, move to a safe room and—" I didn't get to finish the sentence before another sound came through the phone. Knock, knock. A knock at the door. Clear, deliberate. My body went rigid. Pop. It wasn't the frantic pounding of someone freezing or panicking, not the desperate banging of someone begging for help. It was measured, rhythmic, as if whoever was knocking had all the time in the world. Arthur didn't scream. He whispered, like he was afraid his voice might be heard. "It's knocking." "Arthur, don't open the door," I said immediately. "I repeat, do not approach the door." The knocking came again. Knock, knock. The spacing between the taps was so perfect it felt unnatural. "No one can stand outside that long," Arthur said, his voice almost hollow. "Not in this cold, not in this storm." I opened my mouth to respond when the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. No wind, no knocking, nothing. Then I heard a voice. "Arthur," the voice said from outside the door. My skin prickled instantly. It was Arthur's voice. Same pitch, same inflection, same slight catch of breath at the end of the sentence. "Open the door." I stared at the screen in front of me, gripping my headset. On the other end of the line, Arthur started to cry, his sobs strangled and tight. It's using my voice," he whispered. "But that's not me." The voice outside spoke again, softer now, more persuasive. "Arthur, did you forget something? It's cold out here." I leaned close to the microphone, my voice dropping, each word hammered in place. "Arthur, listen to me. No matter what you hear, no matter what it says, that is not you. Do not answer it." Arthur didn't respond right away. I could only hear his shaky breathing, the creak of wood as he backed away. Outside, the voice remained patient, as if it knew that, sooner or later, someone would open the door. "Arthur," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Focus on me. Have you ever recorded your own voice? Any tapes, voicemails, or smart devices in the house?" "No," Arthur blurted out immediately, almost panicked. "Never. I hate hearing my own voice. I don't even use a virtual assistant. There's nothing. Nothing at all." Outside the door, the voice chuckled softly, a short, hollow sound. Then it began to say things that made my stomach tighten. "Arthur," it said, "you still keep the blue jacket in the closet. The one you can't bring yourself to throw away because it smells like smoke from that camping trip in '97. You think no one knows." Arthur choked. I heard him slide down to the floor. No one knows about that," he whispered. "I never told anyone." The voice continued, steady, precise to the point of cruelty. It mentioned the wooden ladder behind the house, the third rung that wobbles. It mentioned the metal box buried beneath the pine tree where Arthur keeps letters he never sent. Details too personal to be guesses. "Arthur," I cut in, forcing myself to take back control. Move away from the door. Right now, find somewhere safe, a room without windows. If there's an attic or a storage space, go there. It's voice, Arthur said, struggling to stand. It's offbeat, like someone learning to talk by listening to old tapes. It imitates, but it doesn't understand. Doesn't understand emotion. I heard Arthur's hurried footsteps on the wooden floor. Outside, the voice shifted tone, softer, more persuasive. Still Arthur's voice, but stripped of the warmth of a real human being. Where are you going? It asked. We just need to talk. Then another sound slipped into my headset. Very faint. Scrape, scrape. Like fingernails dragging across wood. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. I swallowed hard. Arthur, don't run. Move quickly but quietly. Don't answer it. I don't want to be alone, Arthur sobbed. Please, don't hang up. Please. I won't, I said immediately, even though my hands were shaking. I'm here. I can hear you. The scraping stopped. In its place was a heavy presence, as if something were pressed right up against the door, listening to every breath Arthur took and every breath I did. Then I heard another voice. Not Arthur's, not like any human voice at all. It was low, so close to the microphone that I could hear a wet sound, like breath passing through something that wasn't lungs. Arthur whispered, panic gone numb. There are two voices, one at the door, one right behind me. Arthur, I said, my heart hammering. Can you see it? No, he answered, but I know it's there. There was a creak of wood, not from footsteps, but from weight being set down very close. Arthur sobbed. It's smiling, he said, but its mouth isn't moving. I closed my eyes for a second to steady myself. Arthur, look at me. I mean, listen to me. Humans can't speak in two voices at the same time. Humans can't know everything like that. Whatever it is, you cannot let it control your breathing. Outside the door, Arthur's voice rose again, this time faster, as if losing patience. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I leaned closer to the microphone, weighing every word. Arthur, I need you to tell me where you are in the house. The attic, he said. Wooden stairs, pull down door. Lock it, I said. Block it with whatever you can. There was the sound of metal dragging, ragged breathing. Beneath it all, I heard the low voice again, this time so close it made my ears ache. As if it wasn't only speaking to Arthur. I continued, steady and slow. Arthur, you're doing very well. Police are on the way. You don't need to. I stopped mid-sentence. Outside, the voice changed. It wasn't Arthur anymore. It was my voice. Arthur, it said, every cadence, every pause exact, identical to me. Stay calm. I'm here with you. My blood went cold. I couldn't breathe for a moment. I had said those exact words less than 10 seconds earlier. The voice continued, using the same words I had just spoken, like reading from an invisible recording. Inhale through your nose. Count to 4. Arthur began screaming. No, not you, he yelled. You're in the phone. I gripped my headset, my voice hoarse but controlled. Arthur, that's not me. Listen to me. I'm speaking right now. Outside the attic, my voice, the stolen voice, whispered, gentle in a way that was revolting. Arthur, she isn't the only one who can hear you. That whisper was still ringing in my ears when a shrill sound tore through the line, glass shattering. Not a vague impact, but the explosive razor-sharp sound of glass bursting, slamming straight into my headset like someone had smashed the entire room I was sitting in. Arthur screamed. It didn't sound like a typical cry for help. It came from deep in his chest, panic so intense it strangled the air. I heard his feet slipping on the wooden floor, frantic, uncontrolled. It's inside, Arthur shouted. Oh God, it's inside. Arthur, get to the attic, I yelled. Now! He didn't answer, but I heard him running for the stairs. Beneath it all, something else began to move. Not fast, not rushed, wet, heavy footsteps, as if each step pressed down on something soft and living. The sound made my stomach twist, because it didn't belong to any human I'd ever heard over a 911 line. Arthur climbed the stairs, gasping. I heard the attic latch yank hard, metal scraping wood, then a final, solid click as he locked it. I'm in, Arthur panted. Please, are the police here yet? I glanced at the unit status screen. My fingers clenched the pen until it hurt. 12 minutes, I said. They're 12 minutes out. Arthur, listen to me. You have to stay quiet. On the other end of the line, there was no wind, no blizzard howling like before. The silence was so unnatural that I glanced at my headset, wondering if the line had dropped. Then the voice spoke, not from downstairs, not through the front door. It was right outside the attic door. "Arthur," it said, low and so close I could hear the vibration in the wood. "You still hide like you did when you were a child." Arthur sobbed. I heard him stumble backward, his back hitting something hard. "Do you remember the basement room?" The voice went on, calm, almost conversational. "Where you sat for hours because you were afraid of making your father angry. You counted the cracks in the wall so you wouldn't cry." I froze. Those details, too specific, too intimate. Arthur had never told me. I had never asked. It knows everything," Arthur whispered. "Do you hear it? It knows everything." The voice didn't stop. It talked about the first winter Arthur lived in this cabin, about how he slept with the lights on for 3 months, about the old dog that died by the edge of the woods, the one Arthur buried himself in the snow. Buried memories, dragged out one by one, with merciless accuracy. "It doesn't need to open the door," Arthur cried. "It's already in my head." "Arthur," I said, my throat burning dry. "Listen to me. Those aren't your memories. It's how it makes you believe there's nowhere left that's safe." Even to me, the words sounded hollow. The wood began to crackle right in front of Arthur, not pounding, not a desperate attempt to break in, just pressure, slow, steady, like something was leaning its full weight against the thin door. Arthur screamed, "It's pushing!" I stared at the countdown on my screen. 11 minutes, then 10 minutes, 30 seconds. I had never hated numbers so much. "Arthur, put something heavy against the door," I said. "Anything." I am," he sobbed. I heard the scraping of a wooden trunk, the thud of something heavy tipping over. On the other side of the door, the voice shifted. No more stories. No more softness. It spoke slowly, each word sticking to the wood. "You can't lock me out forever." Then, very softly, I heard breathing. Not Arthur's. A long, deep inhale, full and satisfied. A wet, lingering exhale, as if the thing were savoring the fear on the other side of the door. And in that moment, I realized what made my blood freeze. There was no more storm, no wind, no snow hammering the windows, no shriek of angry nature that I'd heard since the call began. Only that breathing, close, clear, filling the entire line. "Arthur," I said, my voice raw, "do you hear the wind?" He was silent for a second, then whispered, barely breathing, "No." The breathing slowed, as if it knew I'd noticed. "You hear it now," the voice said, not quite to Arthur, but as if speaking straight through me. "Now you know. The door was never the boundary." I stared at the screen in front of me, at Arthur's name still lit up in the system. And for the first time in 5 years on the job, I had the unmistakable feeling that whatever was on the other end of the line wasn't just trying to get into a cabin in the woods. It was getting closer. I had just managed to think that when the attic door burst open, the sound wasn't like a door being kicked in. It was the sound of wood bending to its breaking point and snapping, like bones twisted out of joint. Arthur screamed, but the scream was incomplete. It warped, distorted, as if his mouth had been forced up against a microphone, or worse, as if something was squeezing the sound out of his throat. "No." The scream cut off. Then I heard bones break. Not vague, not distant. Clear, close, a dry crack followed by a heavy, dull thud, like a human body hitting a wooden floor. My ears rang, but I still heard it, because the line was still open and everything was being recorded. "Arthur," I shouted. "Arthur, answer me." Nothing. No breathing, no groaning, just a dense, suffocating void where a living person had been moments before. "Arthur," I called again, louder, more frantic. "If you can hear me, say something." No response. For several endless seconds, I sat there, staring at the screen where Arthur's name still glowed like a mockery. I'd heard people die over the phone before, car accidents, strokes, domestic violence. But there were always signs, a clear ending. This time, it was like someone had simply switched Arthur off. Then I heard something else, a rustle, very faint, like fabric brushing against skin, like a hand touching the wooden floor. Then a soft click, so familiar I recognized it instantly. Someone was picking up the phone. I held my breath. The line was still open. I heard breathing, not rushed, not strained, calm. So close I could hear the moisture in each inhale. Then the voice spoke. 911? What is your emergency? I froze. It was my voice, not similar, not close. Exact, pitch, rhythm, even the slight emphasis I always put on the word emergency after 5 years on the job. I'd heard my own voice enough times during training. I knew every flaw, and that voice was missing none of them. I couldn't speak. My throat locked, as if my brain had revoked all control over my body. In my headset, I continued, calm, professional, perfect. Please stay calm and describe your situation. I heard lips moving softly, like whatever it was learning how to use this voice, testing it inside its mouth. You did very well, my voice said, but not to Arthur. Now it's your turn. I shuddered. Who's talking? I forced myself to say, my heart pounding wildly. There was a brief pause. Then the voice dropped lower, no longer bothering to imitate professionalism. It whispered, stretching each sound, savoring my reaction. I see you. I shook my head as if the motion could push those words out of my mind. No, I said. Where are you? A soft laugh followed, not in my voice, not quite Arthur's either. It slid between tones, unstable, like a stretched recording. You already know, it replied. You heard it. The screen in front of me flickered. The call information was still there. Caller Arthur. Location active. No disconnect warning. No termination signal. According to the system, Arthur was still calling. Your name is, the voice began. I held my breath. It said my name. Perfect pronunciation. Correct stress. No hesitation. No guessing. You're working the night shift, it continued. North Dispatch, 3rd row, seat near the emergency exit. I snapped my head toward the door. It was still closed. The fluorescent lights still flickered as usual, but my spine went cold. You like sitting there because the camera doesn't point directly at you, my voice, my stolen voice, went on gently. And because you think that if something happens, you can run. I didn't realize I was crying until tears splashed onto the keyboard. What do you want? I asked, my voice breaking. A slow inhale. Satisfied. Just to talk, it said, like you and Arthur did. Then, very softly, it added, not through the phone anymore, but like a whisper directly into my ear. But this time, you can't hang up. The screen flickered once more. The call timer kept climbing, second by second, like a countdown clock that would never end. And I understood too late that Arthur was never the final target of that call. He was just the relay line. That thought hadn't even settled when the call ended. No warning, no disconnect tone. The screen jumped straight back to idle, as if Arthur had never existed. I sat motionless, the headset still clamped to my head, my heart racing. In the dispatch room, everything continued as normal. Keyboard clicks, phones ringing at other desks, but it felt like I had fallen out of reality for a few minutes and been thrown back in. The supervisor had to call my name twice before I reacted. I took off the headset with shaking hands, my palms slick with sweat. I didn't cry. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head when asked if I was okay. Police reached the cabin after the storm passed, nearly an hour later than expected. This time there were real signs. The back glass door was shattered, not from the wind. The glass lay scattered inward. In the snow outside were footprints, blurred by the wind, but still clear enough to show someone had stood there for a long time. It was no longer the clean scene I'd feared in my head during the call. They found Arthur. His body lay in the attic, twisted into an unnatural position. Cause of death was determined quickly, brutally murdered, multiple wounds, no defensive injuries, as if the killer hadn't been in a hurry, as if he'd had time. When I read the forensic summary, my hands started to shake. Some details matched what I'd heard over the phone too perfectly, not in a superstitious way, but in a way that suggested someone had staged everything. The investigation didn't stop there. Inside the attic ventilation duct, directly above where Arthur had been hiding, police found a small recording device, carefully secured with metal wire. The battery was fresh, the memory card nearly full. When they played it back, the room went silent. On the recording was Arthur's voice, or at least a version of it being practiced. There were pauses, repetitions of the sentence, the same word, spoken over and over dozens of times. The pitch was adjusted gradually, the breathing mimicked bit by bit. Then came another voice, mine. Not perfect at first. Some lines were off beat, the emphasis wrong, but toward the end it became eerily accurate. So much so that if I hadn't known it was a recording, I would have thought it was me speaking during another shift. The killer had practiced for a very long time. According to the investigation, he had been watching Arthur for months. He knew his routine, his sleep schedule, that Arthur lived alone and no one checked in on him. He planted the recording device in advance, capturing every monologue, every call, every sound in the house. The snowstorm night wasn't random. It was chosen. When roads were blocked, when police response would be delayed, when fear would override reason. The 911 call was the final step of the plan. I was brought in to speak with investigators. They asked in detail about what I'd heard, about the voice, about how it changed. The first time I told it, it no longer felt like I was describing something supernatural. Everything fit together coldly, logically, and far more terrifying. There was no monster, just a human who had prepared long enough, patiently enough, obsessively enough to make two people on opposite ends of a phone line believe they were facing something incomprehensible. The killer was never caught. He vanished after that night, leaving behind a crime scene, a death, and a recording no one ever wanted to hear a second time. I resigned not long after, not because I feared ghosts or creatures, but because every time I put on a headset, I thought about how my voice could be used to kill someone. Even now, people ask me what the scariest thing was in my 5 years as a 911 operator. Not the screaming, not death, not violence, but the moment I understood the truth. It wasn't a ghost, it was a human. And what a human is capable of is far more terrifying than any monster.